In celebration of Valentine's Day, Dave, I decided to bake you this cake.
Oh,
Isn't that sweet?
Yes, I hope it will be.
That's right. Now, the machine here has helped me bake this, so I can't really speak to the quality of it. I left them alone for a vast majority of the baking process. So why don't you try a piece?
It's the smell of burning rubber when I walked in here. Okay, 1 second. Oh, that's it's good. It's delicious.
Oh.
Thanks for the thought.
Well, it's the thought that counts. Just like this movie, Message in a Bottle.
I'm excited. I feel like whatever we've seen so far, the computer has, selected great things for us to discuss. How bad could this movie be?
Dun, dun, dun.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine.
So last week, we were told that we were going to be talking about this movie, Message in a Bottle. Do you know anything about this film?
No, I'm hoping that it will be entirely scored by Sting and that, or Christina Aguilera, I just realized. That's it. I've never heard of it.
Just like Sting's sex life. It's just something that goes on and on and on. And conceivably for positive purposes, but who knows? I've never been in Sting's bedroom.
There are things, as we were learning in this day and age, that some doors you just don't want to open.
No, he wasn't in the doors. All right. That's my dad joke for this episode. This episode. This is Valentine's Day. This is, the time for romance. The time for love is in the air. I feel like a romantic film is like the perfect thing to watch. I'm glad that your wife has allowed you to be here for the last, 48 hours. I don't know why you just don't unhook your chain there. It's not exactly welded to the table. You choose to stay here, Dave.
Well, fun fact, I actively am anti-Valentine's Day, much to the chagrin of my beautiful wife. I've spent most of my relationship with her and probably my whole life being one of those assholes who constantly describe it as a commercialized thing. I think my big statement was, why should people have to wait for one day in a year to show each other that they love each other and not just show it every day? To which my wife replies, why don't you just stop talking and we'll go out for dinner? Yeah. So I think she's just
I feel, though, that I like to, much in the same way as a protagonist in a fighting anime, I need to power up over like 18 episodes before my love just like explodes at the other person. That's pretty more graphic than you probably wanted me to get into.
I was just going to say, I thought at first Dragon Ball, and then it got much more pornographic at the end.
Super Saiyan? I have no idea. I can never remember what the term is. To make it sound like I know what I'm talking about when I talk about fighting anime.
Well, I recently discovered that Dragon Ball is still going. And
of course it's still going.
I think it's still with Goku with blue hair.
Oh, is that the new addition?
Like blue, white, and yellow?
I mean, Ash Ketchum just won the Pokemon tournament for the first time in 18 years or something like that.
He has aged really well.
Really well.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, and Pikachu's doing really, really good. He looks great. He looks great for 35, whatever they're supposed to be at this point.
In Pikachu years, he's like 95. So, yeah, he's looking great.
And as I always underscore, not that I've ever played, watched, or participated in anything to do with Pokemon.
But ...
Yes.
I want to say, too, you may have noticed that the machine has actually brought us these new microphones to use today. I don't know what happened to the other ones, but if the room sounds different, it's the machine's fault. And not because I forgot to book a room somewhere to record, because we only record these here in my house in this beautiful fiction that we've created in your mind.
I thought it was because the machine used different materials in the room to bake said cake.
Right.
Yes.
It does smell like motor oil, though, doesn't it?
There's something really disgusting about it, and I'm glad to be
Your
here.
teeth are turning black.
Well, that's just normal. I think,
okay.
Yeah, as all geishas know.
Let's go and watch this movie. Let's get our romance on. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Message in a Bottle.
I'm excited.
You were the life, the second of my life. You were simply my beloved wife.
Dear Catherine, forgive me for being so angry when you left. I feel I've been lost. No bearings, no compass. You were my true north. I could always steer for home when you were my home. I still think some mistake's been made. I'm sorry I didn't hold on to you with so much strength that even God couldn't pull you away. Signed, all my love, G.
You wish it was addressed to Dear Teresa.
Any girl would want to be loved like that.
It's Valentine's Day, which means that love is in the air, or at the very least, swarms of nanobots have infiltrated our brains to make us believe in the concept of love. Either way, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Dave is skirting his duties once again. Apparently, he wanted to have a romantic evening with his wife. So I guess that's what he's doing in this beautiful fiction we've created in this podcast. Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. Our first sponsor this week is Park Power. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference for their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a good fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca. The Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB, is happy to be partnering with Seat Giant to offer you a deal on tickets to major sporting events, big concerts, popular theater throughout North America, and more. So whether you're at home or on vacation, check Seat Giant for tickets to the hottest events. That might be tickets to a CFL game, Oprah Winfrey, Hamilton when it eventually actually comes to Calgary here. Or maybe you want to go and see the Machine's Tight 5 that he's been practicing here for the last few weeks in his quest to be the first robo stand-up comedian. You don't count, Jim Gaffigan.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Visit seatgiant.ca to find tickets. You can use the promo code APN at checkout to get 5% off your purchase. You save the tax. You'll save a bit, and the network gets a little cut of that purchase too. All tickets are in Canadian dollars, even for events that are in the US. Seat Giant is Canadian owned and operated, and it guarantees every ticket. So help yourself to a great experience while helping the Alberta Podcast Network and a Canadian-owned business. Visit seatgiant.ca and use the offer code APN.
Practice.
You're not funny.
Dave, I honestly didn't think that a movie could break me. And yet here we are. A movie that has maybe destroyed the very soul that I don't believe in. But maybe I do now because I feel like less of a human being after having sat through 2.5 hours of that movie.
I know the machine is about to destroy the world, but fuck you, machine.
Come at me, Bruo.
Maybe we just talked way too much about Mel Gibson last episode. That this is his, or theirs, I shouldn't ascribe a gender, their recompense against us.
Don't look at me, machine. You know you deserve this. God damn it. That was
awful.
It's awful.
Sorry to spoil the lead here or bury the lead, but it's a bad movie. We just watched a bad movie, Dave.
Not just watched it. I mean, 2.5 hours. Like we'll never get that back.
Let me tell you this. This is true fact, true story. Me and Dave sitting here on the couch. And Dave goes like, how much longer do we have? And it was an hour and a half is how much longer we had to watching the movie. And I was like, oh boy, like I'm done now. I don't know how I'm going to get rid of the next 90 minutes.
There's this thing called, script writing, pacing, cinematography, directing, acting. Those are essential parts of making a film, none of which were present in this. Would you call it? I don't know. I guess it was a film. It was published. People paid money.
It was released, yes.
Other human beings paid money to watch that. I'm sorry for your pride.
Well, let's do this. Let me just push this button. All right. Printing out this big long receipt for me to read through. So message in a bottle. Let's just get this stuff out of the way, and then we'll delve into the why we maybe don't like it very much. Message in a Bottle. It was released on February 12th, 1999. Also released that week, 2 movies. One, Blast from the Past.
Oh, we should have done that one.
Starring Brent. We don't have a choice over what movies we get to watch, Dave.
George in the Jungle, baby.
Blast from the Past, starring Brendan Fraser, Alicia Silverstone, and Christopher Walken. Directed by Hugh Wilson and written by Bill Kelly. But also, My Favorite Martian, starring Christopher Lloyd, Jeff Daniels, and Elizabeth Hurley. Directed by Donald Petrie and written by Sherry Stoner and Deanna Oliver. I only remember My Favorite Martian because it was advertised seemingly all the time for a couple of weeks. And even as a 15-year-old, I was like, that looks like a bad movie. Why would anyone go and watch that?
I have no recollection of My Favorite Martian. And joking aside, I'm sure Blast from the Past was a terrible movie as well.
Message in the Bottle. It is currently rated 6.2 on IMDb, which is much too high in my estimation.
I'm actually getting angry right now.
Yeah, 39 from Metacritic.
It's cooling me
32% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, 66% from the casuals, the audience. Someone's doing dishes in the back room.
The robot is configuring itself.
Message in a Bottle is available on DVD and Blu-ray, and in Canada, you can purchase or rent it on iTunes, YouTube, or Google Play Movies.
How is this so accessible, Kyle?
I know. How is this movie so accessible, and yet Payback
you can't get
is like
Payback.
You can't even pay somebody to get it. Well,
we were
besides
lucky.
The DVD.
Yeah, we were lucky that the machine provided us with the visuals, but that is apparently not available on any.
On any what?
That is not available. Holy crap. That's a lot of background noise. That's not available on any streaming service, I think. Rental, was it?
Yeah. No,
I can't
not
remember.
even that.
Yeah.
The movie stars Kevin Costner as Garrett, Robin Wright, she was Robin Wright Penn at the time, as Teresa, and Paul Newman as Dodge. So here are some background information. Let's go with Kevin Costner first. I guess my first question for you, Dave, is how is Kevin Costner? I don't really understand. How did Kevin Costner... I mean, I think I know why Kevin Costner became so popular. I don't understand his staying power for seemingly like 15 years or so. He seems to be like one of the biggest stars in the world. And I don't know if I necessarily get it.
I can't explain it to you either. I think there's something about staring at a beautiful crafted piece of wood for 2 hours, right? It's like going into a gallery and just staring at one sculpture. I mean, there's no denying, I suppose, the height and bone structure of the man. And I think he had a bit of a renaissance recently.
Yeah, recently he's come out with a few.
Yeah, that weren't. Things. Yeah, and he was a little bit more human in them, but
I would say I think he is one of those actors. Like he is going to just have that gravitas, for a pretentious word to throw at you, where you can place him in a scene. Is like, yeah, the chiselness of his face is just like, that's enough. That's all we need to stand there and be you type of thing. Let me tell you what was going on in 1999. This was definitely at the height of his popularity. So in the late 80s, he had been in The Untouchables, Bull Durham, and Field of Dreams, basically back to back to back. So I think that is why.
I like all three of those movies.
Yeah. Critically acclaimed, box office successes. Then he directed Dances with Wolves in 1990, which won him the Best Directing Oscar, beating Martin Scorsese for Goodfellas.
Crazy.
So that's a crazy choice that has stood the test of time, I'm sure. He would continue being in films that were part of the cultural zeitgeist. So Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, JFK, The Bodyguard, and Wyatt Earp. But then this movie, to place this into context, there was two pretty high-profile flops that he was a part of I think back in subsequent years. So the first being Westworld. The first being Waterworld, and then The Postman came out right afterwards. I will say, interestingly, Waterworld has developed a bit of a cult following and is now not looked on quite as negatively as it was when it was released. But I certainly remember how people hated that movie when it came out. Like, it was trashed by critics. Made jokes like all the late night hosts were made fun of Waterworld. By the way, one of those films that was ghostwritten by Joss Whedon.
Oh, well, you know what's interesting? I was going to say, for all the flack it got for how much money it cost, by the time I watched it, and I don't know if I watched it in the theaters, I actually liked it. I mean, I didn't like him, but it was a fascinating sort of science fiction post-apocalyptic thing.
Right.
He had gills, which is fascinating. Spoiler alert. But now that you say Joss Whedon, I'm like, yeah, I could see that.
You can see it.
I could see that. Yeah. And then going back, Bryan Adams, Whitney Houston, he had some good affiliation to some good music. Why Sting was left off this soundtrack really bothers me.
Yeah, really. When you name it Message in a Bottle, come on. It's right. Even just over the credits. The end credits has to play this song, you would think.
I mean, the way the movie ends, I suppose it would be jarring. So. But okay, let's keep going.
This film, came after that, and it was kind of a steady decline of his popularity afterwards. With the occasional film that would bubble up to be like in the moderately to fairly successful. So Company Men, Jack Ryan, Hidden Figures. Younger people who may or may not be listening to this podcast, if you're into superheroes, for being Papa Kent or Pa Kent in Man of Steel. So he was Superman's dad.
I had forgotten. Go figure.
Because you know why? Man of Steel is a garbage movie.
What happened, DC? You had such a good opportunity.
You can tell that we are not yet in the old demographic because he's currently starring in the TV show Yellowstone, which is in its 3rd season, apparently.
Is that cowboy one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Co-created by the people responsible for Hell or High Water.
That's actually
a really good
show.
movie. He will next be seen in the film Let Him Go, whose description reads, a retired sheriff and his wife, grieving over the death of their son, set out to find their only grandson.
Just quickly on that, on the question of why with Kevin Costner, which is a dangerous question in general, but he does also go. I mean, he's not as charismatic or have the acting chops I use the word acting loosely, but as a John Wayne, but he is a caricature of a cowboy of the stoic. I'm a man and I don't need to talk for you to understand that I'm going to kick your ass. That sort of thing.
I guess the thing for me with Kevin Costner is that I would buy that more if there was like ever any change of his facial expression. I find that there's no emotion that's coming, which is weird for a movie star because they usually need something. I guess I compare him to Paul Newman, who can do that, right? He can just stand there. He is that quintessential, like, oh yeah, he's the rugged. He can play that old cowboy if you need him to be in that role.
Well, isn't that the split between Paul Newman and Steve McQueen?
I guess, yeah,
right.
That's true.
There's always
also the movie star and the actor star.
Exactly. Right. I mean, Paul Newman's got chops. He does everything, but he's just a fascinating human being in general. Right?
Well, before we get to him, let's talk about Robin Wright. Like I said, Robin Wright Penn at the time. But for people my age, she'll always be known as Buttercup from The Princess Bride. She is the Princess Bride, one of my favorite films of all time. That was her second ever film. Fun fact.
She looked like a baby in it.
Yeah, if you go back now, it's like you are young in this movie. But she would go on to be in so many other productions. When she married Sean Penn for a while, she basically appeared in a lot of his films that he was in or that he directed. Like almost every movie he directed, she was in. A few years before this movie, though, she would have another iconic role as Jenny in Forrest Gump, but would also be in such films as Unbreakable, The Pledge, State of Play, and Moneyball. Then, kind of the big thing that's happened in the last few years is when Netflix jumped into the original content game. She was part of one of the first, House of Cards, where she portrayed Claire Underwood.
Amazing.
Opposite Kevin Spacey. She finished off that series when Kevin Spacey was fired for being, both an abuser and trying to force himself on young men. She was also in a superhero film, as is everyone nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
She was also in the DC universe, interesting from this movie, right? So Kevin Costner played Ma Kent. Ma Kent. That would have been an interesting movie. No, he played Pa Kent. She portrayed Antiope in Wonder Woman and will also appear in the sequel that will be out later this year.
The Trainer.
You will also soon see her in a film she is directing. I believe this is her feature film directorial debut. She has directed TV episodes, but it's called Land, described as a bereaved woman seeks out a new life off the grid in Wyoming. So here's looking forward to her beating Martin Scorsese for a directing Oscar just to come full circle.
What is it about Robin Wright that she's so cold and icily beautiful? Mm-hmm. Like there's something so tortured about her.
I don't disagree with you, and that I think that is the perception. But anytime I see her on a talk show or something, she does seem like a pretty wonderful, open, great human being. But she does do very well. Like, I am the icy, cold, like strong woman who I'm not going to take any crap from you, which is so fascinating that she was married to Sean Penn for so long, in my opinion. Not to cast aspersions. But...
yeah, that becomes a whole other conversation.
So let's go to Paul Newman, shall we? He plays Dodge, of course. And The Machine has written down, I mean, come on, it's Paul Newman. Their words. Their words. So his first ever movie credit is from 1954 in a film called The Silver Chalice. But he would go on to be in so many other great films. So here is a taste. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, The Hustler, HUD, Torn Curtain, Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, Slapshot, The Verdict, The Color of Money, which he won an Oscar for, The Hudsucker Proxy, and later Road to Perdition. So that's just a sampling of some of the films he was a part of. I mean, of course, and this movie, too, needs to be uttered in the same sense. His collaborations with Robert Redford were legendary. He just needed to appear on screen for the gravitas of the situation to be felt, which just makes it... The Machine is with us here, too. It says, which just makes it all the more baffling as to why he's in this movie. So, again, that is the Machine writing this. Although he provided the voiceover for a documentary... his last acting credit was in Pixar's Cars as Doc Hudson, which I always like to point out. Interesting that Cars was his last movie, and he's named Dodge in this movie. Coincidence. This movie was written by Gerald DePego, based on a novel by Nicholas Sparks.
We should have known.
I know. Like, as soon as it said based on a Nicholas Sparks novel, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Gerald DePego, though, wrote primarily TV movies. Nothing wrong with that. Just stating the truth. His first feature film credit was in 1996 for Phenomenon, the John Travolta starring film, if you remember that one. I think he could like move things with his mind, if I remember correctly. He would write another film that came out in 1999 called Instinct, starring Anthony Hopkins and Cuba Gooding Jr. And in 2001, he would write the movie Angel Eyes, starring Jennifer Lopez.
Nope, got nothing.
I know these from the posters. I have not seen, I think, a single one of these movies.
But is Instinct and Angel Eyes like horror movies?
Instinct, I believe, is a thriller. Angel Eyes, I'm not sure. His last credit currently is the movie Words and Pictures, which starred Clive Owen and Juliette Binoche, which came out in 2013. It was directed by Luis Mendoki. I'm probably really butchering that last name. He is Italian. He started his career in Italy in 1980, but would make the jump over to America to make English films by the late 1980s. The other high-profile-ish films that came out before this were Born Yesterday, a comedy with John Goodman, Melanie Griffith, and Don Johnson, as well as When a Man Loves a Woman, which starred Andy Garcia and Meg Ryan. Then there are these like huge, large gaps in his career. But he was the one who directed Angel Eyes, so him and the writer kind of collaborated again. Currently, there are 2 films he's directing that are in pre-production, but the first that is likely to come out is Banking on Mr. Toad, a biopic about the writer Kenneth Grahame, the birth of his iconic story The Wind in the Willows, and his life with wife, Elspeth, and Alistair, their troubled young son.
One of the things that I've learned, particularly in iTunes, is that when the synopsis of a film requires you to click more,
right?
That's usually a sign that film is not going to be particularly good.
Something that was pointed out to me that I didn't even realize that I do, but because of the community I'm a part of, being a bisexual male, I always jump to a person's personal life section to see if they're gay or not. just because I'm always curious. I wonder, is Tom Hanks? No. Well, so he says.
We'll see.
So he says.
As Hollywood becomes to unravel.
The budget for this film was somehow $80 million,
What the fuck?
which in today's dollars is $123 million for this movie. I don't know how. Literally
How?
do not know how. I mean, Kevin Costner must have asked for a lot of money for this film.
Yeah, there's
apparently.
some laundering there. That doesn't make any sense.
Its opening weekend, it made $17 million. Domestically, 53. Internationally, it made another 66, giving it a total of $119 million, which is $183 million, our money conversion. However you want to say that, not awkwardly like I just did.
I just feel ill.
Well, I mean, the thing about it, though, that would be that would not have been considered a success, because if it was budget was 80 million, usually again even back then about half of the budget is what they spent on marketing, so 120, so it made 119, so just under 120, so it may have broken even at the best of times. So this was not like a runaway hit by any stretch of the imagination. With all that being said,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
why do you not like this movie?
Because it exists. I feel like
Okay, sure.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know. It was plotting, didn't make any sense. I just wasn't engaged in anybody in it. Kevin Costner's, I'm struggling to even remember from the opening sequence of this elaborate and weird meeting in the airport with her and a child who doesn't figure in the movie at all, with this man and this woman. I think there's a presumption that this is the woman that the man was cheating on. It doesn't matter. And then, what was it? She's on this like beach house, and
Yeah, I mean,
the
to really
housekeeper
break it
tells her
down,
to go
like
have
here,
sex with a skinny dude because he might have a long
yeah.
penis. Like it's just strange.
wow, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic gist of the plot is yes. So we start off with meeting Robin Wright and her character Teresa, dropping off her son to be with her ex-husband by what it looks like. Then she decides to go on this vacation, finds this message in a bottle, which piques her interest because she's a journalist, in quotes, a journalist, and then gets obsessed by it, wants to write a story. Things happen in the plot, discovers who the guy is, goes down there, does not reveal this information, and then develops a relationship with him.
Right.
It's supposed to be romantic, I guess, although it's based on lies anyways. Here's the thing, this whole trope of like keeping something from somebody, falling in love, and then that being revealed, causing tension in a relationship. This is by no means
Am I
new.
a bet? Am I a fucking bet? Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
right.
yeah, we've been there.
We've
been here.
seen it in films we've already talked about here in
Yeah.
1999.
Yeah, we've been here.
But it just seems so, unlike those ones, literally she just had to introduce herself. Hi, my name is Teresa. I'm writing a story on you. Can I ask more questions?
Because still
she's
fall in
writing
love.
a story on him.
Could have still
I
fallen
don't
in
get
love.
her like subterfuge. Why is she hiding all this information from him
She's like
when
the
it makes no sense to hide all that information from him?
She's like the original Catfish. It's just a weird thing for her to walk in. And there's that scene where she's going to take a large sum of the newspaper's money based on a credit because of her personal relationship with her weird boss, which is never explained entirely, other than he's clearly obsessed with her sexually. And she shows up at this thing. She's creeping into people's houses.
Yeah, she's like doing this like investigative journalism, but that's not her beat. Like that's
No.
not even what she's supposed to be doing.
No.
And that's the thing that we mentioned is like, okay, the newspaper is paying obviously for all this research. I mean, that's fine, but it's like she's going on these like expensive dates with him, wasting time. Like the newspaper's probably paying for her hotel room to be there for like 10 days.
That's right. That looked like
But
a pretty
again,
nice hotel room.
She is there to write a story. She is there to write a story on him, the relationship with his wife, obviously, that he was writing these notes to and this messages in a bottle, and then telling the story of where he is now. So I do not get why we're not seeing her try to do that at all, or at least have some throwaway line about why she isn't doing that.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, outside of our trying to stay on the professionalism and ethics thing, I mean, if you're going to do this subterfuge, at least have a lead in where, there's a little bit of a hint that her husband's showing up at the airport with the apparently younger and gorgeous woman. There's a little bit of visual tension there, but, maybe make it about, her having been lied. You could build a small background story where she has that anxiety of, it's, not not having to be herself and acting a part. But they don't do that. She
No.
just walks up and
I
and
think-
she's cold. I mean, you don't even feel empathy for her. She's Robin Wright. Not to
Well, I mean,
It's
I
true.
guess there's very little I understand about what her motivation is through the entirety of this movie. I think that the movie is hinging and hoping that the mystery, I'm using air quotes, the mystery is going to be enough to pull us through. The mystery being like, what was the relationship with this man and his former wife? Why are they not together anymore? What actually happened to her? Because I think it's supposed to be set up, he might have killed his wife. I think is what we're supposed to be led to believe. And there's things that are revealed over time. And then the real story comes out, which is, yes, tragic and stuff.
presumably.
So,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, for the majority of this film, I felt kind of bad for the Kevin Costner character more than anything, just because like he's being lied to. People are prying into his life when he isn't asking for that. Like he literally just wants to live his life, making his little boats and stuff like that. His dad, apparently played by Paul Newman, knows better and is trying not to be an alcoholic by drinking only 2 beers a day. Very progressive back in 1999, I'm sure. But I think what you started off with is like none of it really makes any sense, and we're trying to cobble this together. I think the much more egregious sin that this movie gets to, and so I'm going to apologize, spoiler alert for a 21-year-old film. The way this movie ends is the epitome of bullshit writing. And I think what Nicholas Sparks gets criticized a lot for his writing being this treacly, like unearned tearjerker of a plot point where the Kevin Costner character just randomly decides to jump off a boat to save this family, and then he dies. Why?
Yeah.
Like, why is that even in this movie? There's no lead up to that. There's nothing for him to even show him to be a person that saves people.
Even preceding that, Robin Wright appearing at the christening of the boat that he has made in the honor of his ex-wife to reconcile with her. I mean, that part is fucking ridiculous in general. And then she chickening out, I guess because the name of the ex-wife is on the boat. Who cares? And then she leaves. He tries to talk to her. He doesn't chase after her like the knight in shining armor. Paul Newman, God bless his soul.
He tries.
He tries.
I will say, there's some of the reviews I read about this movie beforehand all point out like, Paul Newman is pretty good in every scene he's in, which I don't disagree with, but he is so
Well, there's nothing for him to work with.
Yeah, there's
It's
nothing
such a-
for him to work with here. It's basically just be as gravelly voice as you can and be an old man.
Well, you know what I liked about him, and this is why he's an actor, is you get the shit script. If you're a human being, and if this is not one of those movies where they were writing it as they were building it, which is also a possibility, but if this is actually a complete script and I'm Paul Newman and I read this, A, I don't know why I agree to do it. And B, I wonder like, okay, I've got 6 lines. They don't make any sense. The relationship between the father and son are shit. And somehow he has scenes where he looks happy. There's a part where he's tearing up. There's parts where he's, you can feel this connection with his son is so aggravated, like just because he's on the screen.
You know what? I have a little pet theory. There's a hat that he wears the entire movie. I am like 99% sure he was just like showed up like, I'm wearing this hat for the movie.
It's Paul Newman, yeah.
Because, you know what? I'm going to wear this hat because I want to.
Actually, now you brought that up, I wonder if everything was ad-lib for him and he just went off script because he was like, this is garbage. This is what I think he should say.
I was in the motherfucking Sting. Okay? I'm not going to read this.
Now we're just being spiteful, but
I know. But I think that's the central crux of this is like, yes, this is supposed to be this romantic film and we're supposed to be swept up by like the romance. And I don't feel any romance. I feel people being lied to. And I don't feel that there's really that much chemistry between Kevin Costner and Robin Wright.
there was none.
And your very nice wife did watch this with us. She came over, even though you haven't seen her in 48 hours. And I liked what she brought up in that she thinks that Robin Wright is kind of a terrible mother, as portrayed in this film.
Yep.
Which I can't disagree with. She has met this man once, has slept with him.
No, spooned with him like 3 times.
That's right. Sorry. Does not have sex with him. So met him once, had a couple dates over this like 10 days of investigation.
Yeah.
Invites him to come up to New York and meet her son right away, which is like right there. It's like red flag. What
There's
is
a lot
going on
there? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then arranges for him to go to a sleepover so that she can finally get
Bone down.
get to the next level. I mean, there are
There's a scene where the kid goes off in a taxi or someone picks him up, and then literally Kevin Costner like bolts into the house because we know what's about to happen.
It's the strangest thing. I think I was more offensive before that they would, what was it? I can't remember if it was in the house or in the hotel, but they're doing shirtless spooning. There's a spooning scene on a beach, I'm pretty sure. And
you just hate spoons.
Actually, I love spooning. No, but it's like you're just sitting there like, what is going on? They're not getting into it. So are we supposed to imply that?
Why are they being so chaste? I mean, I guess we're supposed to still feel like he's feeling guilty because of his ex-wife, his dead wife.
But they haven't brought that up.
I don't know. It just seems so odd and weird.
And slow.
If it was going to be this thing about like past sins that we're trying to keep hidden, like I could see that being an interesting movie, but because we don't really know what they're keeping hidden, it's just frustrating.
And this may be a directing thing, but if you're going to go that way and your intent for whatever reason is that he has to die this idiotic, tragic death, but then if the implication is that there's a parallel to his wife, then throw in some fucking flashback montage or something give us something.
I want to see him boxing with a side of beef, being over his dead wife. And go from there.
The intense hatred of the wife's family that pops up presumably in the middle. It might have been in the first 30 minutes, but it felt like an hour.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like there's all these things and elements they add in, which like there's more that needs to be explained to me as an audience member. There's one thing, like we mentioned before, how we enjoyed how in She's All That, Kieran Culkin is wearing like those hearing implants. But that doesn't become important to the plot. So it's an interesting character choice, and it adds into, I think, the fiction of the film because it doesn't need to be commented on. It's just a reality.
Right.
In this, it is actually important to the plot. We're not given the information, and it never is really explained.
No.
So then, like, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our time?
I mean, there's that fascinating moment where after he has delivered the symbolic painting to the panicked, hiding mother, then the brother shows up in this very strange scene and silently decides,
nods and starts sanding something.
Yeah, they start lathing a boat.
The mother's almost like scared that Kevin Costner's going to beat her up or something. Like that is another thing. Like, okay, I guess.
Why don't we play on that? If you're a director, maybe I've been watching
her up a bit, Kevin.
Well, yeah, maybe I just watched on personal note, like some Agatha. I've read the Agatha Christie. When you want something edgy, then just put it in. But they were chickening out until the end. And then he has that one little memory thing with his wife on a beach,
right? And
caring, and it doesn't explain anything because there's even the tension where the family and his family have two different versions of how she died.
Well, that's the thing. Like this is the level of screenwriting that we have going on here, and this is probably from the book. I'm guessing. I guess I don't know, but I'm guessing it's right from the book, where it's like it's called The Illness.
Right.
Like, we don't even really figure out what it is that she was sick with.
No.
So the illness took her.
Yeah.
Which is, again, pretty unsatisfying.
Super weird.
It's like, well, plot device. And then that was the explanation so that we can move on to the next scene. Here's what I want to ask you. This is kind of where I wanted to go, what I was thinking about, because the movie itself, I don't think is very interesting. I think that there's a reason why this has been lost to time. I do not feel like this is a movie that needs to be revisited ever again.
Yeah.
I want to talk about romance. If you cast your mind back, pretend that you are whatever age you were in 1999. I'm assuming 45. So whatever age you were at in 1999, what did you think romance was going to be?
Well, Romeo and Juliet had come out the year before or something. I mean that's a tragedy, obviously, but I think what am I? 20. I'm 21, so. I think
you're 21 now, or you're no, I guess
the concept of a 21-year-old, at least me, I'm definitely probably not representative of the average person because is still tainted bitterly by this idea of soulmates, finding someone, having this cherished chemistry. And then whether it becomes a narrative of beating all odds, like the Romeo and Juliet thing, where you're placed in opposite ends of the corner, or, together having to overcome something. But there always has to be this thing where you have to overcome and you come together. There has to be some sort of tension there. And in the end, there's got to be some making out and some cheesy music.
Yeah. So like me being the teenager, I would have been 15 at this point. I mean, the hormones are raging at this point in my life, of course. But because of the steady diet that I had of like Hollywood and other media that I was consuming, there was kind of the same thing that you would just know. It would be this moment, the fireworks would go off, that sort of thing. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think if anyone actually sat me down like, this is actually what love is, that I would necessarily even believe them or would have even understood what they meant necessarily. Also, being kind of a closeted guy, it was like I was terrified of that. There was all these other issues that were going on in my head. Now, he has his own issues from critics, but being the fan of John Green that I am, who also writes young adult fiction, he has a quote that I believe appears in The Fault in Our Stars, which is that love is something, I'm going to butcher this quote, by the way. So he writes that love is like sleep, where it doesn't happen and then it happens all at once. And I kind of agree with that to a point where it's not something that's like, oh, I'm now in love with you and I'm going to be your soulmate and we're going to have this happy life together. It's kind of this gradual thing. And then you're in it. Like, yes, I now have these feelings. They're very intense for you. But it wasn't like I didn't and now I do. It was like that gradual thing. And then you realize, oh yeah, no, I do. Like, this is something that I very much want to continue on. But I mean, that's the thing. Even if I had read that, even if that novel had come out and I had read it as a teenager, I would have been like, I don't really understand what that means.
Oh, how could you? We don't have enough.
So this skewed vision of what love is, and probably why I had such terrible relationships in university and onwards.
Well, as a final thought to that, I think the other thing that was happening for me at that era was a lot of influx of foreign films and, Japanese manga, and I was reading, this, that, and the other thing. So I was
thought you had to go and fight somebody off.
Well, there's always a fighting aspect, which is cool. But also there are little small trickles of other cultural ideas of what romance is. And so, like your quote, that love is not kind of like the white wedding. It's not this end thing where all of a sudden your life is like perfect, but rather that it's through this, whether it's suffering or a trial or, two people that actually dislike each other. And through this ordeal, they come to find whatever it is, you complete me and all that kind of crap, right? When's that movie? Is that before Tom Cruise? You Complete Me? No.
Oh, that would have been before this.
Right.
A couple years before this.
So there's that, right? The antagonism of two people.
I think that's also the danger that Hollywood has brought us, is like, actually what love is you hate each other and then you love each other. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened in the history of the world, but boy, is that kind of a bad thing to set people up into. It's supposed to be very antagonistic at the beginning.
I think around this time, maybe, and I could be wrong about the timing, but I had heard somebody state some study that, and this could be propaganda, but that arranged marriages in, I think it was India, might have been China, but arranged marriages were infinitely more, like they had almost a zero divorce rate. Now, there are cultural factors there where whether divorce is looked, upon fairly or not. But I remember watching that, and there was an interview with couples, and they were talking about how in their culture, the idea of the arranged marriage was opposite to the Hollywood romantic marriage. It wasn't that the marriage was about, we look so deeply into each other's eyes, and now we have to spend the rest of eternity together. It was more like, well, here we are in the same house. How are we going to make this work? If there's an honest insight and the people are reasonably ethically sane, then it's, okay, well, this is where I'm good at. This is where I'm good at. And then as they grow older, they begin to work together, and then love can exist. That's a very idealistic and pretty version in that documentary that I watched. But
I think it is that open communication.
Yes.
Like a true relationship cannot work if you are not talking with each other.
Yes.
Which is, usually when any type of relationship, whether it's romantic or not, starts to crumble. It's like, if you're not talking and like, this is affecting me, or I don't like this, or I do love this, and you're not having that back and forth, then it all kind of crumples.
I mean, just to bring up my wife again, that's what Helen and I used to say anytime people used to ask us about our relationship. We would sometimes just quip, like, we make sure we never go to sleep angry, which is actually hard sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Not hard, it's a little overblown, but things happen day to day. But if
they
you don't
ate that last piece of cheesecake when I told them I was going to eat it.
Hey, sometimes it can be something like that, right? But if you go to sleep on that stuff, or you think that you have to ignore it or absorb it, then those things build up. So yeah, the narrative of romance, the actual experiencing of it, when I'm 22, it's one thing. Now that I'm 41, it's a totally different thing.
Well, I mean, this also goes into my whole outlook on how Romeo and Juliet is actually a terrible love story when you cast 20 or 30-year-olds in the role, which they most often do. But when it's actually portrayed by a 13 and 14-year-old, then it actually makes sense because they're impetuous and don't really know what love is.
Although you wouldn't get that in America because of the implications of, age of consent and all that kind of stuff.
Implications, yes.
Enough.
Well, I mean, the robot now has said that we have talked long enough. I'm surprised he let us go on this long, talking about message in a bottle.
This is how you know the robot plans to destroy the world.
Yeah, I don't think he may be as...
He's conniving.
He is conniving. That is a great word. He is not this he's not this ambivalent machine over here. He's forcing us. He is testing us. So hopefully we've made him happy and we can go on with our lives. Here's some trivia. He's printed off some trivia here for us. And then we can leave. This is the first adaptation of a Nicholas Sparks novel. You are on record, though, as saying that you do not like The Notebook, the other big adaptation of his work.
I mean, how much time do I will say this. So I avoided The Notebook, principally because clearly that's not a movie that I would want to go see by interest. And then over the years, Helen kept talking about how she loved this movie, and I kept making fun of her because I'm an asshole. And then over the softening of time, I agreed a few years ago anyways to sit through a screening of it on our television, and without knowing anything about it. And I think it was about a quarter way through, I turned to her and I said, "This is written by a man." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" "This is a movie written by a man that's just desperate for attention, and it's fucking awful. But I will see it through it to the end because, I've agreed to it." And we got to the end. I mean, this, again, stoic man doesn't have to do anything. The hysterical woman, tragedy is it's the same fucking story. And then when the credits rolled up, and it said, I don't know if it was written by or, based on a book I was like, "How did you know?" And I was like, there's a tone, at least of that era. I'm sure as we get older, it's going to change. But Nicholas Sparks, I hate how personal this is, but I will never read any of your work. Yeah.
I mean, when I worked at a bookstore, we looked down on his writing too. So, I mean, the pretentiousness will feed us for decades.
Maybe this is why we're being trialed, just because we are too judgy, maybe.
Yeah. A bunch of money was added to the budget because, maybe this is why it got ballooned, but a bunch of money was added into the budget because of the house they filmed in. They needed to add a fireplace and added the addition to the house where all the artwork from the wife was kept. So this was a real house they shot in, but they had to do all these different additions. And after it, the homeowner said, "No, put it all back." And I like it the way it was before. So they had to come and take out the fireplace, replaster over it, take off the addition. So yes, it cost them as much to undo it as it did to do it.
Just a quick note on that, and my suspicion of money laundering in the general Hollywood business is that, having worked in insurance and appraised and worked through damages and repairs of homes, especially in the United States, even if they tore that goddamn house down and tore it down and rebuilt it again, it would have been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not in 80 million. So this idea of a budget,
yeah, that's true.
It's insane. It's like, I think someone's lining pockets.
I really want to know where that $80 million
maybe it's the yacht. Maybe they sank a yacht.
Maybe they bought the first that whole town.
Maybe when they christened it, it kept breaking the bow.
That's right. They went through 17 flights of champagne.
$80 million.
There is a bar fight. You might remember this scene where there's a small little bar fight between Kevin Costner and, we soon find out, his brother-in-law.
Chet. Is that right?
I think it was Chet, yeah. Chet or Chex, who cares? It was either a cereal or a chip brand. Who knows? You can actually see in that scene, Kevin Costner has a bleeding lip. That's real blood that we're seeing in the film. This happened when an extra, accidentally, he says, accidentally punched him right in the face.
Method.
Didn't pull his punch. But credit to Kevin Costner, who sounds actually like a pretty decent guy, to be honest, with people that have talked about him. But Costner thought it added to the scene, so they kept it in. You can see him get punched in the face and the blood coming out afterwards.
This is the thing that I am becoming sensitive as we do these, as we meet Kyle, is these appraisals of movies and people's work in them. I don't want them necessarily to reflect my judgment of them as human beings. Some of them turn out to be quite insane. But for example, Keanu Reeves, I went on a boycott of him for a little while for this reason, that I thought he had no acting. I'm not sure if I disagree with that either now, but as it turns out, he's like, at least in the public eye, the nicest human being ever created.
God's gift to everyone.
Yeah, and his cameo on the Amy Wong thing is quite hilarious. But yeah,
Always Be My Maybe.
Yeah. It's so self-aware. It's amazing.
Well, I think that's it. That's going to wrap it up here. This is a podcast called Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. So you can actually, if you agree with this, disagree with this, you can send us email at kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. And if you can, leave us a review on the old iTunes store if you are an Apple person. And if you're not, find someone who's an Apple person and force them to do it, because it actually makes us track higher. Well, I am scared, Dave, to see what we are going to be burdened with next as we barrel through 1999 here. Oh my gosh.
What?
Oh, we got a good one. We finally got a good one. We get to watch Office Space.
Sweet.
All right.
Sweet.
Well, the nadir of depression that we had to sit through here on this, our Saint Valentine's Day of 2020, is going to get rectified next week when we get to watch Office Space.
It's great. I was just planning to lay down for a week in my bedroom with the shutters closed, just contemplate the end of the world. But Office Space is pretty exciting. It's a classic.
We're going to do it. Also, if you can take that cake to go. I don't, not really eating sugar anymore.
No,
so
I'm just full up. I got a little bit of a wrist cramp, so I think I'll
He's
just
gonna get mad. They baked it, so I mean, my hands are clean in this case because I did not do any work. Therefore, they're clean.
For the sake of the world, I will carry this out and not find the nearest garbage can to drop it in.
Weirdly enough, where I put my copy of Message in a Bottle.